Today in New York State, most people would assume that every New Yorker has basic protections when it comes to their jobs, their homes, going out in public, but it's just not true. Transgender New Yorkers today do not have the same basic civil rights in New York that most New Yorkers take for granted. It is absolutely the shame of the state. This is solvable with a bill called GENDA that I sponsor. It's passed the Assembly with Assemblyman Richard Godfrey's sponsorship from Manhattan, I think 7 or 8 times. And yet we can't get the New York State Senate to simply say every New Yorker should have the basic civil rights that most New Yorkers take for granted. It's unacceptable. I've got 3 people who care a lot about this issue, and I'm going to start with my first guest right now, Q Daly. Hi, Q.
Hi.
So where do you live?
Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, New York?
Yeah.
So do I. And how old are you?
I'm 9.
You're 9, and so you're in school. What grade are you in?
3rd grade.
3rd grade. And just tell me, what's your favorite thing to do?
Climbing and running.
Climbing and running. That's pretty good. And do you like school?
Yeah.
And where do you go to school again?
BNS.
BNS, what is that? What does that stand for?
Brooklyn New School.
Brooklyn New School. So you're a 3rd grader at Brooklyn New School?
Yeah.
Brooklynite? You love climbing and running. Are you fast?
Yeah.
Sure, you're faster than me. We can race after the show. So I want to turn to your mother, Francisca Montana. Mm-hmm. And so why is this issue personally important to you?
Well, my kid needs to have the same rights that everybody else. It is just not fair that other people get the basics and mine doesn't. Yeah, so like what we are trying to do is raise awareness about this issue specifically, like the disparity, but also raise awareness about the fact that some people in the New York State are not covered by like the most simple rights. Yeah, you can be discriminated against when you go and ask for a job. You can be discriminated against when you go look for housing, and this of course put a certain population in a position which is like absurd. It's just like at this time in our lives and the 21st century, it just doesn't make any sense.
And when you say your kid deserves the same rights as everyone else, you have how many kids?
I have 2.
You have 2 kids, and one of your kids is a transgender New Yorker.
One of my kids is a transgender New Yorker.
Excellent.
And I want
and
to
an
say,
activist too.
Yeah. And I want to say a proud transgender New Yorker. We like also fight for visibility, yeah, and for like humanizing the issue. Like people think about transgender issues at the moment, and they think about like, I don't know, celebrities or like really like, I don't know, this like different things that don't really resonate with the reality in the ground, yeah. Transgenders are a lot of people. You don't even know who is transgender and who's not. And you shouldn't, like, it shouldn't be an issue. So we want to bring visibility to this also.
That's great. And we also have with us Melissa Sklarz, whose record as an advocate is the size of a phone book. We don't have time to talk about it, but Melissa is also on the board of the Empire State Pride Agenda, former president of Stonewall Democrats. So why is recognition important, Melissa?
It's very important because New York is a beacon. People come from all over the world to be in New York for a whole bunch of different reasons, and that includes transgender people. So we have hundreds of thousands of people with gender identity issue and transgender issues, and to be able to get basic, simple civil rights protection, legal protection, and the ability to live a life just like every other New Yorker is very important.
Now, some people have said to me when I say, look, this is crazy, you know, in the 21st century, no one's willing to stand up and say some people should be discriminated against. Why can't we get this bill passed? Some people say, oh, this is just about waving a flag and about being a new group that gets talked about on TV. Is that true?
Senator, we're running out of people to try to convince that trans lives matter. We have virtually the entire state supports us, from all the unions and faith leaders and all the newspapers, the police forces, most elected officials, most of the people, 75% of New Yorkers. And yet there's a small group in the Senate that is determined that this bill is unnecessary or they're inventing reasons not to support us.
And so tell me from a personal standpoint why this bill is so important.
When As a child, I felt different. I didn't have a language. I didn't have role models. I fought my feelings very hard. In the end, I was forced to embrace it. I dealt with years of substance abuse. I was homeless. And then once I was able to have my authentic life, it took years to find a job. I was out of work for over 5 years. I was lucky to be able to be hired by Gay Men's Health Crisis and Gay Games. Now I have a job that I've turned into a career. That opportunity should be available for all transgender people, regardless of their educational background or their race or class.
And you suffered discrimination in employment because of who you are.
When I used to go to employment agencies, there was one place I went to, they thought that I had been sent there as a joke. They didn't take it seriously. I tried to get a job. I have a corporate experience and a college degree, and I tried to get a job as a receptionist and administrative assistant. And I was lectured at one place about my appearance, how it's inappropriate, and that if I wanted to be taken seriously, I should present myself more seriously. This is a few years ago, and it certainly adds fuel to my effort and energy to make this available to everyone.
Right. Well, I mean, it's amazing to think that that's not a story of the past, as so many stories of discrimination are in this country, shameful stories of discrimination. That's a story that's still under state law allowable until this bill passes. Let me ask you, you go to a school, I'm sure, with a lot of Brooklynites with all kinds of backgrounds. Do you think any of the kids you go to school with could imagine that someone could be told you can't live here or you can't be hired just because of who you are? Does that make any sense?
No.
Why not?
Because people can do what they want to, but they can't be mean and they can't tell other people what to do.
It's pretty amazing that the New York State doesn't understand that, and you understand that so well. So what do you think is the hope here to get GENDA passed, just so that we can all live our lives, all have the same protections that as people, as New Yorkers, we should all have?
Well, I hope that the Senate get to, I don't know, just come to a realization that this is just so overdue. It's not even, it's a joke at this point. It's like, you can't just keep some people from having the basic.
A tragic joke. What would, and I'll ask any of you, I'll start with you, Melissa. What would you say to senators who just want to avoid the issue? They think it's a little politically uncomfortable. They think it's not that big a deal. We don't need these protections for transgender New Yorkers. What would you say to them?
Supreme Court has ruled that all gay and lesbian families are legal and protected in the eyes of the law. There are 2 states in America where same-sex marriage, where marriage equality is the law without transgender protections and civil rights. One is New Hampshire and the other is New York. The idea that whether you're a young person like you or an older person like me, and we're still going to have to struggle without the idea that our government will protect us, is unfortunate. What our enemies in the Senate should do is let the bill come to the floor. Let's discuss this openly. There's nothing controversial about it. 20 states already have these protections. 3/4 of the people in this state have these protections. I should not have to worry about whether I can go to the bathroom if I travel to Suffolk County and worry about what happens in Nassau County, or if I go speak to our representatives in Albany, if something happens along the way on the thruway, whether my civil rights will be protected or not.
Plus, the state should have a role. It shouldn't be left to localities, although I would say the town of Vico, Kentucky, population 1,700, is ahead of New York on this, if you could believe it. Francisca, briefly, what would you say to senators who would rather this issue go away, be kept in a back room, instead of providing basic civil rights for all New Yorkers? What would you say to them?
Well, I will ask them, what made them think that my kid shouldn't have the same protections that everybody else in this state? Why? What makes them think that this is the way to go? If it's not important for them, maybe they should look around and learn more about their communities and be more real about what is happening to this population, to us.
And Q, what would you say to someone who thinks it's okay to treat someone differently because of who they are or how they dress or what they look like?
Well, if they wouldn't want to be treated that way, they shouldn't do it to other people, because if you do it to other people, they'll hurt your feelings.
Right. And there's no reason to do it. We are all who we are. Thank you all very much for doing this and for your fight. And if you want to join this fight for basic equality for all New Yorkers, whether you know someone or love someone who's transgender, today or tomorrow or never, it's all of our fight until we have a state that treats everyone equally, and Q said it much better than I did. Thank you so much.